as the Baltimore Ravens move closer to the NFL's final roster cutdown deadline, a time when all teams must trim their squads to the official 53-man roster. Speculation and strategy dominate the headlines. This is one of the most tense and crucial periods of the football calendar, as dozens of players are released league-wide and teams keep a close eye on the waiver wire for potential additions who could strengthen their rosters. For the Ravens, despite having one of the deepest and most talented lineups in the league, there is always room for adjustments. Baltimore has long been known for capitalizing on these opportunities, adding players who may not have initially seemed to fit, but who, under the Ravens' developmental system, managed to carve out a role. Every year, at least one unexpected name that arrives via waivers or the practice squad ends up making a difference. The primary positions of concern this time around are twofold: the offensive line and the inside linebacker group. Both areas could use more depth. The offensive line, in particular, is critical to protecting Lamar Jackson and sustaining the team's trademark rushing attack. Injuries and physical demands make it essential to carry multiple reliable options. The inside linebacker core, while solid at the top, could also benefit from more consistency in its depth chart. However, beyond these obvious needs, another issue has started to emerge: quarterback depth. Specifically, the third-string quarterback role, usually reserved for the practice squad but still significant in emergency situations. Through the preseason, it became increasingly evident that the Ravens have not yet found the right player for this position. Cooper Rush, signed to back up Lamar Jackson, began to settle in and showed some rhythm in the third preseason game against the Washington Commanders. But the same cannot be said for second-year quarterback Devin Leary. Baltimore had hoped he would take a step forward from last year, when he was already released after the preseason, but his struggles continued, raising questions about his long-term viability in the NFL. The numbers reflect the problem. This preseason, Leary completed just 25 of 45 passes for 167 yards and failed to throw a single touchdown. At times he struggled with accuracy, decision-making, and above all, arm strength, which limits his ability to execute within Baltimore's offense. While he looked somewhat more composed in the final game against Washington, the overall body of work suggests little to no improvement. At this point, it is difficult to justify keeping him on the practice squad. This opens the door to another possibility that has sparked excitement among fans: a potential reunion with former Ravens quarterback Tyler Huntley. Huntley is a familiar face in Baltimore. A fan favorite during his tenure with the team, he was thrust into action on multiple occasions when Lamar Jackson was unavailable. In total, he started 9 regular season games, posting a 3-6 record, and he also led the Ravens in their 2022 wild card matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. While Huntley's statistics never turned heads, he always displayed grit, competitiveness, and the ability to manage the game. Recently released by the Cleveland Browns, Huntley put together a strong preseason showing. In 3 games, he completed 17 of 22 passes for 129 yards and 1 touchdown, while avoiding turnovers altogether. That type of consistency and efficiency makes him an appealing option for any team looking for quarterback depth. It also raises the question of whether the Ravens could seize the opportunity to bring him back. It is important to note that Huntley would not be in line for a spot on the Ravens' 53-man roster. That depth chart is already settled with Jackson and Rush. However, if the market for Huntley proves lukewarm and other teams pass on him for active roster duty, Baltimore could act quickly to secure him for the practice squad. For the Ravens, that would essentially be an insurance policy, ensuring far better stability than the current third-string option. The potential reunion would also carry an emotional weight for fans. Huntley became a beloved figure for his effort and resilience. Supporters remember the way he battled through close games, often stepping into difficult situations with poise. Seeing him return, even in a developmental or emergency role, would no doubt spark enthusiasm across the fan base. On the other side of the equation, Devin Leary's time in Baltimore appears to be nearing its end. After 2 preseasons that failed to inspire confidence, it is almost certain that he will be released again, this time without much of a case for a practice squad spot. His chapter with the Ravens looks to be closing before it ever truly began. Ultimately, whether or not Huntley makes his way back to Baltimore depends less on the Ravens' desire and more on how the rest of the league views him. If other franchises see him as a clear backup option, he will land on an active roster elsewhere. But if he slips through the cracks, the Ravens will have the chance to shore up a vulnerable position with a player who already understands their system and has proven himself in the past. As roster cutdown day approaches, the anticipation in Baltimore continues to grow. The Ravens are poised to make the tough decisions necessary to finalize their squad, but the possibility of adding reinforcements at offensive line inside linebacker, or even quarterback lingers. And if the stars align, a familiar face could return to Owings Mills, ready once again to don the black and purple. The Baltimore Ravens have officially started the process of cutting down their roster to the league-mandated 53-man limit, a deadline that always brings tension, uncertainty, and some difficult decisions. Every year around this time, hundreds of players across the NFL see their futures take unexpected turns, whether it means being released, moving to another team, or catching on with a practice squad. For some, it marks the end of the road. For others, it becomes just the beginning of another opportunity. According to Jeff Zrebiec of The Athletic, one of the first casualties of Baltimore's initial round of cuts is rookie offensive tackle Reed Holski. The move was not necessarily a surprise, but it still stands as a reminder of how competitive and unforgiving the NFL can be, especially for undrafted free agents fighting to carve out a spot. Holski, just 23 years old, entered the league as an undrafted free agent in the 2025 NFL Draft out of Miami University in Ohio. He joined the Ravens shortly after the draft and provided the team with extra depth on the offensive line throughout training camp and preseason. Standing at 6'6" and weighing 310 pounds, Holski has the frame and raw tools coaches love to develop. But as roster cuts loomed, it became increasingly clear that he wasn't going to secure a spot on the team's final 53. Last week, head coach John Harbaugh already revealed the starting 5 offensive linemen heading into the season: Ronnie Stanley at left tackle, Andrew Voorhees at left guard, Tyler Linderbaum at center, Daniel Falale at right guard, and rookie Roger Rosengarten at right tackle. That announcement essentially locked in the starting lineup and left only a handful of depth positions available. With those 5 established starters, the battle turned to just 4 available roster spots for the rest of Baltimore's linemen. Given the sheer number of players in the mix, it was always going to be a tough squeeze for Holski. Veteran offensive tackle Joseph Noteboom and guard Ben Cleveland were always favorites to secure roster spots thanks to their NFL experience and versatility across multiple positions. Additionally, the Ravens invested a 5th-round draft pick in 2025 on Carson Vincent, a promising offensive tackle out of Alabama A&M, which all but guaranteed him a roster spot as well. That left one final opening on the offensive line, and competition quickly narrowed between 2 young interior players, backup centers Nick Samak and Corey Bullock. Both entered the league in 2024, with Samak being a 7th-round draft pick and Bullock arriving as an undrafted free agent. Each has shown flashes of development, and the Ravens have been impressed with their ability to handle multiple roles on the interior. That internal competition ultimately squeezed Holski out of the picture. Of course, being released doesn't necessarily mean the end of Holski's time in Baltimore. If the Ravens liked what they saw from him this summer, he could find his way back onto the practice squad. However, that path is not without obstacles. Spots on the practice squad are going to be just as competitive, with many rookies and young players putting together strong performances during the preseason. Baltimore will have to make calculated decisions about who they believe can provide immediate depth and long-term upside. For Holski, his resume at Miami University demonstrates he has what it takes to compete at a high level. A native of Palaskaya, Ohio, he was a mainstay on the Redhawks' offensive line, starting 53 of his 54 career games at right tackle. His only other start came at left tackle in the 2024 Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl, showcasing his versatility. Over the years, he became a cornerstone of Miami's offense, protecting quarterbacks and paving the way for a rushing attack that consistently produced results. As a senior, Holski earned first-team All-MAC honors and was named Miami's Offensive Power Player of the Year. The year before, in 2023, he earned second-team All-MAC recognition while helping the Redhawks average 158.1 rushing yards per game. That success culminated in a conference championship victory over Toledo, further cementing his place as one of the top offensive linemen in the MAC. Holski also showed durability and reliability, starting 13 games in both 2021 and 2022. Those accolades and his collegiate pedigree helped him earn a shot with Baltimore. But the NFL is a numbers game, and with the Ravens stacked at offensive line, the odds were always slim. Still, players like Holski often bounce around the league, getting opportunities on practice squads or catching the eye of other teams in need of depth. Offensive linemen with size and college production rarely stay unemployed for long. For now, Holski's next step may be out of Baltimore. The Ravens' decision to prioritize experience and versatility in their offensive line depth chart ultimately edged him out. But given his age, size, and proven college track record, he could be a candidate for another team looking to develop young talent. And if he clears waivers, there's still a chance Baltimore could bring him back as part of their practice squad, keeping him in the building while giving him time to develop. As the Ravens continue trimming their roster down, the release of Reed Holski underscores the difficult nature of this time of year. For the team, it's about building the strongest 53-man unit possible. For the players, it's about survival, opportunity, and sometimes heartbreak. For Holski, his journey in the NFL is just beginning, and whether it continues in Baltimore or elsewhere, his college career and early flashes suggest he will have more chances to prove himself.